His personality was enjoyable and outgoing and smiley and very engaging, asking a lot of questions.
I think Tonia had no idea this kind of person existed. She came from a nice family, a good background.
I think I fell in love with John because of his attentiveness towards me and his interest in me and how good he made me feel.
Real Crime Profile is brought to you by many wonderful sponsors such as ZipRecruiter, Madison Reed Hair Color, Quip Toothbrush, and Man Crates. We are so thankful to have their support and so happy whenever they have a special offer just for our Real Crime Profile listeners. So please, when you hear one of these special opportunities to try a new fantastic service or product, do go over and check them out. We can't do our show without you, and we certainly cannot do it without the companies who make our show possible. You can find the most recent sponsor offer in our show notes, on our Facebook page, and on our website, realcrimeprofile.com. Thanks so much, and thanks for listening to Real Crime Profile.
So I started snooping. I found a picture of a resident at the hospital circled. I found directions to a hotel room in a female's writing. And I found on the very top shelf, pushed all the way to the back, a box of anesthesia drugs, fentanyl and Versed. So at this point, I was married to John for almost 10 years, and I'm realizing that everything I've lived up to this point in my marriage is a lie. I knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. I thought that he was using drugs, but I also came to learn through his family that he was shipping them from Ohio to California for his brother to use. They call me and say the brother is dead. Then basically I'm saying this needs to end right now.
Hey, it's me, Laura Richards. I'm back in the studio with
Lisa Z.
And our special guest.
Hi, I'm Tonia Bales. I am the infamous first wife of Dirty John Meehan.
And we're continuing our conversation because we had so much to discuss with you. How are you feeling, Tonia? Just to go back, how are you feeling hearing all of this for the first time?
Well, sick. I don't know how to describe it to anyone because I don't know that anyone can really understand what that's like to know that the person you've been married to has changed his name. He's not the age. He has a history. I'm not even sure to this day how I processed that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. Your whole life with him has literally been turned on its head in one phone call.
But I just started then gathering as much information as I could. I searched his office and I found more narcotics in a box, Versed and fentanyl in a box, and I found, evidence of an affair. And then, of course, the anesthesiologist started filling me in. John was out of the house that summer, and by that fall, his brother had overdosed and died. So when his sister called me and said, they just found Danny unresponsive and he's overdosed, and she was crying, she was hysterical, and she said, tell John, don't come to the funeral, because they also held him responsible. Even if the drugs that John sent weren't exactly the ones he put in his vein that day and killed him, he definitely helped feed that brother's addiction. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And so it was ruled an accident. Daniel was actually in California. Is that right?
He was in California. It was ruled an accidental overdose because he had surgery recently and was taking lots and lots of prescribed pain medicine.
Right.
However, there was numerous, I've been led to believe there's numerous correspondence between the two brothers.
Yes. So after I find out that the brother has died, that's when I say, I've had enough. I can't keep any of this information. I helped him get his CRNA license, and now I'm going to help him lose it because he cannot be distributing and mailing narcotics across street lines, much less state lines. And someone has now died. A neighbor of mine Mr. John Schickner, who has now passed, told me that he knew somebody who could open the hard drive of my computer, and that anything that's been deleted, emails between, him and his brother might still be on that computer. So we got somebody to do that. And sure enough, there's emails telling his brother, how to use them and be careful and don't mix it with alcohol or you'll, wake up in the hospital not breathing. That's kind of exactly what happened. Yeah. So now I've got all this information, and I'm telling my divorce attorney, and she tells me to go to the prosecutor. So I went and had a conversation with the prosecutor, and then I had a phone conversation with the local police department. John by then had hidden that box of narcotics. It wasn't where I had found it. The police officer found it in the sump pump of our home in the basement. And so then I thought, okay, this is over. We're done. John's going to jail, but that's not what happened. He was able to continue working as a nurse anesthetist, and very scary time for me because people were reporting him then to boards of nursing to get him to, lose his license. And of course he thought that I was the one doing that. And those are, part of those phone conversations and threats that you heard, that he was going to kill me or have someone kill me.
Where he's saying, enjoy your last, days on earth. And
yes, enjoy the time you have left on this earth. Yeah. And when you see it in your eyes, you'll know it was me, and it's going to happen. I mean,
terrifying stuff. And the hairs on the back of my neck went up when I listened to those calls, mainly because the way that he delivered those threats to you, and, the fact that I know in the research and analysis of domestic homicide reviews that 1 in 2 stalkers and abusers who make a threat like that will carry it out. And 1 in 2 is half of them, 50%. So even just hearing the way that he was talking to you and hearing you risk manage him, and then the fact you had to hand the girls over to him, and the terrible situation you found yourself in where you knew you were at risk, and yet the system is telling you have to hand your girls over to him. And if you don't, you'll be the one that ends up in jail, which is sadly the situation that I end up helping many women in that very dangerous and risky situation. And, he was a real risk. And in fact, the detective you ended up speaking to a lot across the time, Detective Dennis Lucan, he was one of the few people who really understood the risk that he posed.
That's correct. But I did want to go back a second because when those tapes were played for the 2 male attorneys who were listening to them trying to get me a protection order, they said, well, you don't really sound scared in those tapes. Yeah.
Which is outrageous.
You don't sound like you're scared. I'm not sure we'll be able to get you a protection order. And I said, oh, trust me, I'm scared. I'm trying to keep him on the phone. The police told me to keep him on the phone as long as possible to get him to say something other than, enjoy your time left on this earth. Because on a transcript, just reading that sounds very nice. Enjoy the time you have left on the earth, Yes.
No, but he's fearless. He doesn't care. I mean, why doesn't he care that he's leaving this evidence of his insanity? I mean, and his threats.
Because he went to law school and he's smart enough to know that he can say, he say she misunderstood me. He didn't say I'm going to slice your throat. He didn't say I'm going to strangle you or I'm going to dump you in the ocean. He's just saying enjoy. It's all kind of hidden in there. And I think he knew that, he could get away with that. That's not what I meant.
I mean, how threats are delivered and then, how law enforcement and others read into those threats. And normally they just say, well, they're not credible. They don't have the means to carry it out. They don't have the capacity. And that's where I spend a lot of time in classrooms with, law enforcement and others explaining that 1 in 2 of them will act on that threat. Now, the fact that they're listening to you and you don't sound so scared, well, everybody handles threats and behaviour in different ways. We're all unique. And even if you weren't articulating your fear, that doesn't mean to say you're not fearful. And I've had many cases where, you don't hear fear in someone's voice on the receiving end, but they are truly fearful.
I didn't want John to know I was afraid of him. I was standing up to him, and I didn't want him to see that or know that. I think he still knew it anyways, but...
I mean, you were scared for your girls and for you, and Detective Lucan actually said, at various points, get your girls and run, hide, because he understood the risk. And so to Lisa's point, how was it that when all this paraphernalia is found, when his a suspect in Daniel's death, why is it that he's still not being held responsible for his actions and his behavior?
Well, I mean, I do understand that we both had access to the same drugs and we both worked at the same hospital for the first part of his career. So I think they did have to kind of work through the fact that this is a upper middle class couple, educated couple, who are divorcing, and the wife is finding out that, he is having an affair. And, I think they had to at least suspect that maybe I could have possibly been setting him up. So I think they did have to work through some things like that.
But isn't there an immediate protocol? I mean, there should be, like, whether that's the case or not, maybe both of you were suspended or something, but there should be immediate steps that are neutral that...
Let me promise you that I called and talked to the police department, not Detective Lucan. This is before Lucan was on the case, but the other, police officer. We had many, many conversations, and I just remember in one time I just had this epiphany that narcotics were removed from my house. Shouldn't someone be arrested? Like you say, and isn't there a protocol to do something, to do the lot numbers, to go to our jobs, to start questioning people? I mean, I was baffled by
let's test both of you for drugs and see who doesn't pee themselves, in fear that they're going to be,
Right. And I had been sent a interview had been set up with the DEA in Cincinnati, and I went down there and talked to two agents in Cincinnati, and one of the gentlemen sat in the corner and basically almost fell asleep. And
that's how seriously it was being taken.
Yeah, and that DEA agent also said, well, this, might be looked, upon, that you guys are, in a divorce right now, and, kind of was going down that path. And
oh my
it's
God.
just outrageous.
It's unbelievable.
It's asinine. I mean, they're all the attitudes, the misogyny and the BS that we fight every day. When women go in and report these things, it's with real, fear and concern. And the right questions need to be asked. So I hear what you're saying, Tonia, but I'm just expressing my outrage because there's just no way that should happen. And certainly, in this day and age, we still hear of those attitudes that permeate, and it's more the norm than it is the exception to the rule, even present day. And I still feel a lot of it is about misogyny and how women are just not taken seriously when they report. Here is a very dangerous man who actually, for years had been stealing drugs and siphoning things, out of systems and processes, and he was on lots of people's radar. It's that the systems and professionals in it just didn't see him as someone who was dangerous enough to ask the right questions of. Whether that's something to do with his charm and, how he could speak to people and sort of get them to see his point of view over and above other people around him. I think some of it talks to his skill set at manipulating.
Yes, I'd love to tell you another story about that. A meeting was called with John, the local police, the hospital that he was working at in Ohio at the time, the head of anesthesia of that department, and the director of pharmacy at that department. They had reviewed his records. The head of anesthesia said that there was a problem. This meeting was called. John was at the meeting. John immediately dismissed the police. And I was like, you can do that? He did this just from the meeting.
Unbelievable.
Yes. And then he asked to speak to the anesthesiologist privately out in the hall. So he and the anesthesiologist went out in the hall, had whatever conversation they had, and when they came back in, the anesthesiologist said that he thought John was an adequate CRNA and he didn't have any problem with him.
What is he, a magician?
To this day, I've always wondered, what did he have on that guy?
Yeah.
Because that's how he works. He gets something on you. Whether that anesthesiologist was having an affair with somebody at work, I can only imagine. I don't know. But John knew something about him, and he threatened him out in the hall.
And you've just hit the nail on the head. Coercive control and psychopathy, it's all about controlling and dominating others. So they're very good at data mining, getting information out about people, about their vulnerabilities and the things that matter. And so to people, it looks like they're interested in them. But once they get to share the secret, then they weaponize those secrets at different times to get what they want. So that coercively controlling aspect, we see it in relationships, intimate relationships, but also it can be amongst work colleagues. And, some people mistake it for, just a threat, but it's actually all about coercive control, manipulating others and having that vulnerability and being able to, like he comes in and suddenly all the concern about John's behaviour is evaporated. The police have been dismissed. No one's asking any more questions. And he seems to have been a cat with 9 lives, across his life course. And at times law enforcement did catch up with him, but for very short bursts. And I think for threatening you, he went back to prison, didn't he, for something like 30 days, because he was on probation. And so the threats and the menace, knowing that 1 in 2 of those stalkers and abusers who make a threat will act on it, well, 30 days is probably just going to make someone angrier. It's not going to drive out the behaviour. And this was somebody that they should have been taken seriously. And I'm still just, amazed that, well, A, it ended as it did, i.e. that he was the person that ended up dead, but just how you all managed, and I do pay credit to you, because I think some of your risk management strategies with him, were spot on. And hearing you talk in those conversations gave me insight to how you were managing him and de-escalating things at times. But that's not to say there wasn't a credible threat to you and to the other women, and of course to the detectives as well at times, to Julia Bowman, who he took a contract out on, and even Detective Dennis Lucan said he was, frightened for his life, and he actually had a picture on his fridge at home and said to his wife, if you ever see this man, run for your life. Hey, lovely RCP listeners. How many of you have stuck to your New Year's intentions or resolutions? We all know starting a healthy routine and sticking to it are 2 very different things. So I recommend setting yourself up for success. And when it comes to your oral hygiene, there's no better electric toothbrush than Quip. It has a built-in 2-minute timer pulses every 30 seconds to remind you when to switch sides and help you to clean your whole mouth evenly. Well, why do we need that? Well, up to 90% of us don't brush for a full 2 minutes or don't clean evenly. And then there's the brush heads, which are automatically delivered on a dentist-recommended schedule every 3 months for just $5. A little friendly reminder when it's time for a refresh and to stay committed to your oral health, because 75% of us use old, worn-out bristles that are ineffective, and that's why I love Quip, and why over 1 million happy, healthy mouths do too. Quip starts at just $25, and if you go to getquip.com/realcrime right now, you can get your first refill pack for free. That's your first refill pack for free at getquip.com/realcrime.
I was devastated. I married him to be married to him forever.
I absolutely feel like he abandoned my family. He consciously made that decision.
Him leaving really upset me, and I felt really unloved, and I felt like I wasn't enough for him.
People were genuinely scared when he made those threats, or when you got in his line of sight and you didn't conform or you didn't do what he said. It's then that, he would scorch the earth and take revenge. Terrifying stuff.
Yeah. One of the best things that ever happened to me was that Donna took him to California because that made him very difficult to be in my backyard.
So you get a divorce and he's out of your life, and is he like out? Does he come to visit the girls? Do they visit him? Do you have any contact with him at all?
Well, I mean, before he, went to Michigan prison, he was visiting with the girls, but he would always shorten the visitation, or he would have an excuse, or he has to work, or, but, I know he's under investigation by the DEA. I've reported him, and there was a period of time where I wasn't allowed to tell him that. And that's what Laura's talking about, that I'm finding all this stuff out about him, and I have to take my kids out and put them in, the back seat of his car. Not knowing, is he using now? Is he hanging out with people that, could hurt my kids? Yeah. And, my attorney's telling me I can't not send my children.
Terrible. What God. A terrible dichotomy to be in. And so many women still are in these awful situations. So what happened next?
So he does go to California, and Well, I'd love to talk about the fact that when he got out of Michigan prison, he was ordered. We were ordered psychological evaluations for him to even visit with the children, because he came out of prison wanting joint custody of the girls.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, of course, right? And so psychological evaluations were ordered, and both of the psychologists suggested that he have supervised visitation. They thought he's now definitely a flight risk. They felt that he had a vendetta against me, and the psychologist, basically told me he is not, he's going to go away, basically. And I argued that if he's going to go away and that, why do we have to reintroduce the children to him? Why do we have to break their hearts again? And he said to me, Tonia, he said, it's better for children to know that their father is a douchebag than to fantasize that they're missing out on a great father. So the children were reintroduced to him, and supervised visitation was to take place. And then we had to figure out who was going to do that. Nobody I knew wanted to be in the same room with John Meehan. And his sister agreed to do it. And then John suggested that my new husband be a supervisor. And of course, my husband's like, I'll protect the kids. I'll do it. And so the very first visitation that my husband, Augie, was to supervise, John requests the visitation at his house. So now my new husband has to go to John's house, take our girls, and visit at John's house. And guess who's there at John's house? Another woman that he's brought from California who has 3 children, triplets. And I think to myself, what could he have told her as to why his ex-wife's new husband has to supervise him with his own children when she has 3 little girls of her own?
Right. And he also used the girls dating, didn't he? He would put them in, his profile and include them. So, it's probably the way that he managed to attract her is through his children. But yes, a story that his narrative will, of course, be so different from the truth.
That's right. And my husband went to that supervised visitation with a switchblade and a tape recorder. Yes, he did, because he had no idea what, was John going to try and incite Augie in some way to do something? And my poor husband, he's like, oh my God, I hope I don't have to kill him in front of his own children. But he was ready for whatever was going to happen, So John visited 3 times in that year. The psychologist wanted him to come once a month for an entire year, and then they would reevaluate what situation he was in or make changes. And so John came 3 times, but at a year, he takes me back to court for joint custody and wants to be able to take them out of state. And the judge said, John, you were supposed to come once a month for an entire year. You didn't do what the order was, and I'm not letting these children leave the state of Ohio with you.
Do you think he did that just to drive you crazy? Or do you think he really wanted to bring the children with him? Because that's such a, you can't be too selfish when you have children with you, you have to be selfless.
And that's exactly what the psychologist said. He's not vested in these children. He's going to leave. Yeah. But we had to be tortured, of course, for another year. Before he did. And then, of course, when he eventually, he was emailing us constantly, nasty things, attacking my husband, saying he was going to touch his daughters. My husband has 2 older daughters, that they could easily be touched, whatever that means. I don't know if that meant hurt or touched in some other way. I'm not even sure what that means, but, harassing us that way. And then he would be quiet. And I always knew when he was quiet, he probably had another woman. And although that made me sick that now some other poor woman is going to get it eventually, I naturally enjoyed the peace that I was receiving, during that time.
Right. I mean, that's always the bittersweet irony that you get a hiatus, but at the same time, most women know their attention is probably elsewhere. And that's why these serial abusers really should be on a register, because they do go from relationship to relationship and woman to woman, and they clock up a high victim count from doing so, and yet there's no way of them knowing all of the history. I mean, you're still piecing it all together, aren't you? Every time we have a conversation, there's something new that you learn. But there really does need to be a register for these dangerous people. And there were multiple restraining orders too, and pieces of paper do not protect from a dangerous individual like this. So the system seems to always be stacked in their favor.
Yeah.
I wonder if we should skip forward, and I wanted to ask you, I don't know if we have time, but, when was the first time you heard the name Deborah Newell or Chris Goffard's voice? I'm Chris Goffard from the LA Times. Please tell me all of your stories about your fakakta husband. So, I mean, how did that all come about?
Well, the first time I heard the name Deborah Newell was because in the summer of 2015, probably maybe during a time where John and Deborah were not together, I'm thinking, John tweeted my oldest daughter, Emily. And he tweeted her saying, I'm so proud to see you're doing well. She was in nursing school at the time. And I have something I want to get to you, and put his phone number up. And of course, she hadn't heard from him since 2005. So it'd been 10 years. And she called me like in a panic, like, oh my God, he found me or something, And so we had to work through that. I had to work through that with Emily, whether she would call him or not call him. I always kind of let my children work through that without me, dictating, even though, of course, I wouldn't have wanted them to. But because of that tweet, I got on the phone and called his sister. And I said, I thought, no, maybe he's dying, because we kind of expected him to die one way or another. So she's the one that told me that he had gotten married. I was shocked. I didn't think John Meehan would ever marry anyone, ever again. And so that's when I learned Deborah's name. And she had already told me that they had split and they had gotten back together. Yeah. And then, of course, Jacqueline called Detective Lucan after that Thanksgiving, I think it was. And Detective Lucan, of course, would always call me when all these women would find him through like the Dayton Daily News news articles. Then he would call me and let me know he's up to it again. He's back at it, So that's the first time, that I learned about her. And then I was actually contacted by a different reporter right after, John was stabbed, who wanted to start asking me a lot of questions. And I just really wasn't ready. It was too soon. I'm dealing with, my daughters. And but I did let her email me some questions that I could just answer, online. Because I knew that it would take at least 8 hours to talk to somebody and tell them, the extent of the story with him. And then one day, Chris Goffard, reached out to me, and he had a way about him that I trusted that he was going to do a thorough story. And I chose to be involved because I wanted to help it be told right, if it was going to be told at all.
Absolutely.
Where can you find the perfect Valentine's Day gift for a man? Man Crates. Man Crates knows what guys like, and they have hundreds of gift options, so you'll find the perfect surprise for them. These gifts are totally unique, and the best part is they come in a sealed wooden crate with a crowbar, and you get to bust it open, and that's half the fun. Unique gifts like personalized barware crate with personalized pint glasses and bottle opener, and the pizza grilling crate with pizza stones and two-sided dough roller. He'll use it all the time. My favorite was the wine connoisseur crate that I got. And I'm also learning how to make a leather messenger bag myself. It's really cool. Or you can try Man Crate's take on Valentine's with a jerky heart, a heart-shaped box full of beef jerky, or the salami bouquet. That name says it all. Give an unforgettable Valentine's Day gift this year. Plus, every Man Crates comes with 100% satisfaction guarantee. Get them a Man Crate plus one of their meaty Valentine's gifts and save. Just for Valentine's Day, get 14% off when you spend $100 or more at mancrates.com/realcrime. That's 14% off when you spend $100 or more at mancrates.com/realcrime. mancrates.com/realcrime.
Let me start by saying this. John Meehan's nickname is Filthy John Meehan. Yeah. But why? Why? His friends call him.
Remember when you first created that nickname and why?
Yeah. Yes, I do, but it cannot be divulged on camera.
I don't take showers.
Yeah. Still got his hands on his knees. His friends call him the Cruiser.
And were you able to know the details of John's death, or how open was the family telling you sort of everything that had happened?
They were initially very open. Yeah, his sister Karen, the one who actually pulled the plug on him, was very open in telling me all the details.
Yeah. I think it's important when you've had a monster in your life to know, how they were destroyed,
Yes. And as a matter of fact, they were criticized for taking pictures. They took pictures of him in the ICU. They took pictures of him after he was dead, and they took a video of him being incinerated. And that was, I've never seen that. I thought that was a little bit unusual, but it was very important for all of us who thought he was like that monster in the movie that keeps getting back up. John Meehan kept getting back up. And so I came to appreciate having seen those things, because there was no funeral. No one went to his funeral. Anybody who went would have spit on him probably.
Deborah said the same, seeing him lying in the hospital bed, they just expected him to wake up.
Yes.
And that kind of, haunts her. Now, in the Bravo show, of course, you're played by Sprague Graydon. And I watched a clip of her talking about you, which was great. And I want to ask your reaction to, how she characterized you. And what did you think of the way that she portrayed you?
I think she did an excellent job. I mean, they do change the storyline quite a bit. Of course, she had nothing to do with that, but I think she conveys all of the emotions very well in her acting, in her facial expressions. At times where she's just looks sick, like I described to you, like you just want to throw up. Learning all these details and the fear and just that. I was going to be somebody who was going to survive this and stand up to him. I think she portrayed that very well, too. And that I was going to protect my children. Don't mess with with Mama Bear.
Absolutely. I don't know if you heard her talk about you, because I know you had a couple of phone calls, maybe even more than a few, but she said, she described you as being so passionate about your job and being kind and a mum first and very accomplished in what you do. And that, people put their lives in your hands in many ways, and that you take away their pain. I thought it was a lovely way that she described you, and having got to know you, over the last few months, I would agree with that. She really seemed to get the sense of who you are.
Yeah, I think she did. And I love that you brought up, my profession, because unfortunately, we're kind of a hidden gem in the operating room, and a lot of people don't know what nurse anesthetists are. And unfortunately for some, this is the first they're learning about our profession, and that may be scary to some, but I can assure you that, nurse anesthetists have been given anesthesia for over 150 years. And I think, we give something like 45 million anesthetics a year. And we've been administering anesthesia in every type of surgical case and technique and practice in every setting in which anesthesia is administered. And, some people are, maybe sometimes scared that it's not a doctor or an anesthesiologist, because that's what they think or who they think gives anesthesia in this country. And that's, just not true. And I do want to say one other thing about our profession, that I believe what sets us apart from our physician counterparts is our addition of the nursing dimension into the profession of anesthesia. As we know, the nursing profession excels in caring and compassionate, non-judgmental, and we have a strong ability to empathize with patients at the bedside. And whether that bed is a hospital bed or an operating room table, we provide patients with the attention, the respect, the kindness, and dignity that they deserve at a time when they're their most vulnerable.
Here.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm absolutely bowled over by what you do, and you're very accomplished. You're very passionate about what you do in terms of your profession as well, but also on a personal level. You're strong, you're smart, and I've seen you with your daughters as well, who are a joy. And of course, there is a legacy here because there are children involved too, and you're navigating some very difficult things in the aftermath. It's not just that it's been and gone, but you've got your beautiful daughters as well, who are strong. And, I hope that, they will see this as a chapter in their lives, but not the ultimate defining part of who they are, because they very much take after you and your very positive and incredible attributes that I have come to know over the time that we've been talking.
Right. I want my children this is their story, and it's not, a lot of it is not a very good one, and they are, from his genes as well as mine, but I don't want them to be ashamed. I feel strongly that secrets aren't good, and I want to stand in the truth that is our life and our story, and show that you can survive things like this and things much worse.
And that's what you said to me, our very first meeting. Do you remember? And, when you said that listening to our podcast empowered and validated you, but also that you said to your girls that, this is not your shame. This is not for you to feel shame about. The shame is with him. And I said to you, that's such a powerful thing to say. And I'm so pleased that you feel that way and are sharing that with your daughters. And you're brave and courageous, and you're trying to ensure that others learn and understand what happened, so it doesn't happen to anybody else. And I can't praise you enough for that, so thank you so much.
And you certainly carry yourself with such grace when other people could have been so embittered by this entire experience. You don't have that vibe at all. You have such a very placid, calm energy that I think is just marvelous to watch and experience. So
right, and on that note, it's not Deborah's shame either, and she has been shamed. And I wrote a note down: being unsuspecting does not mean you're stupid.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we were just unsuspecting.
Right.
We were not stupid.
You were human. You were human, and this person
manipulated.
Yeah.
And that's why the shame, the blame, the judgment should be on him. And I've said it time and time again, when people have criticized Deborah in particular, and I've seen some of the terrible emails she's received, more often from women than actually from men, blaming and shaming her and saying that this is all down to her. Well, no, it's not. It's actually about how John created a skill set. It became his tradecraft, that he could make women fall in love with him. And he took their vulnerability and he took what I would call their strengths, and he turned those things into their weaknesses, and he could weaponize things. He understood people's vulnerability, and that's what psychopaths do. And the shame and the blame, it's a conversation that I always want to put survivors and those who've experienced things at the center of all of our narrative on Real Crime Profile, but absolutely shine the light on the perpetrator's behavior, the abuser's behavior. It's about them, and their responsibility rests with them.
That's exactly right.
Well, Tonia, thank you so much for joining us. It's so great to meet you. Laura has just praised you to the skies, and it's just great to see you face to face. So I hope everybody will go out there and watch the documentary, get caught up on Dirty John, the podcast, get caught up on Dirty John, the Bravo series.
And listen to our previous episodes
and listen
on Real
to
Crime
our
Profile.
previous episodes. What numbers are they, Laura? I'm sure you know.
So they're the bonus episodes from October last year, so our listeners can find them on our feed.
Absolutely. So you just can't get enough of this topic. For now, this is Real Crime Profile signing off.
If you like our podcasts, there are a few things you can do. You can take 2 minutes and go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. You can also check out all Real Crime Profile offers and promotions and our sponsors in our show notes. Another thing you can do is go to Facebook and like our Facebook page, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Real Crime Profile without the E. And one last thing, please tell your friends, family and colleagues about us and spread the Real Crime Profile word. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate all of our listeners.
Real Crime Profile is produced and edited by Paul Francis Sullivan. Sound engineering by Mike Thal. Music is composed by Simba Tsumba. Logo art by Jim Clementi. Real Crime Profile is produced by XG Productions and distributed by Wondery.
For advice and support if you're experiencing stalking in the UK, you can contact Paladin National Stalking Advocacy Service on 0203 866 4107, or you can go to the website where there's a lot of information and advice that you can follow on www.paladinservice.co.uk. If you're experiencing domestic abuse, you can call the National Domestic Violence Helpline for free on 0800 247. In the US, if you're experiencing domestic abuse and need advice, shelter or counselling, you can call Genesis, the 24-hour hotline, on 214-946-4357. You can also go to their website for further advice or support, www.genesisshelter.org. And there's the domestic violence hotline on 800-799-7233.